Christmas. It's nearly Christmas. Oh, God.
Well, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today. So, as you all probably are aware that familiar with the channel, I'm usually outdoors in that glorious cold weather. But I've got a bit of a sore throat and I've got that strep throat of all things. So today's video is going to be a bit of an indoor one. I usually would be outside, but every time I go outdoors, I'm coughing like an 80-year-old woman that's been smoking for 50 years. So I've decided just to give that idea up this weekend. But the lovely people of Instagram have given me a massive hand with the video today. So I asked them to ask me anything, and the majority of the questions that come back were photography related. So I'm going to have a little look at those. Where have I put my phone? There she is. Right, yeah, so I'll just crack on and see what sort of questions that we've got. Let's have a look. So I'll start off on the comments, and then I've got sort of an Instagram reel thing going on, and there's some on there. Right, so 15. So let's have a look. Just go straight to the bottom. Wayne Shardlow, would you do workshops with a small group of like-minded photographers to share tips and ideas? Yeah, absolutely. That's something that's in the pipeline, so keep an eye out for that one. I will update people on the channel and on Instagram in that case. The next one, Tink Lauren, best camera on the cheaper end of the scale for a newbie. Oh, now this is going to cause some arguments, I think. I personally think you should go with one of the trusted brands, and I personally trust Nikon and Canon, and I would go for a mirrorless camera if you can put a little bit more money into it. And the reason for that is it's a little bit lighter weight equipment, and I often find as a new photographer getting a big chunky hefty sized camera is quite off-putting. So yeah, I would go for a mirrorless camera, an interchangeable mirrorless camera, and Canon and Nikon do a couple. So there's the M50 Mark II with the Canon. I personally have used that, and I've had every single lens, and they're all very, very good. The only thing that I would suggest is that camera struggles a little bit in low light, but you're going to get that with any entry level thingy. And then Nikon do a Z50, which is exactly the same as the camera that I use, but with a smaller sensor on there and few of the features missing, but the usability is there. And it has like they both have like a menu on there that helps you get yourself off to a good start with photography as well, so that's why I'd recommend them. Mojo Bridge asks, is it difficult to walk across the Humber Bridge? Yes, it can be. If it's nice weather, it's absolutely fantastic, but there's a walk slipway that you can go along. If it's blowing a gale and sideway rain, that's the best time to go across there, I reckon. Keto Dad Bod 1 asks, what is the best experience you've had whilst out shooting? So I will pop a photo up now on the screen. So this is one of the first photos that I took when I started taking photography seriously. After all these years, it's proven to be one of my favourites. It was the first time that I really realised how photography can really pull you into the present moment, and I became very hyper aware, and it was that moment of clarity and realisation that photography is an absolutely beautiful thing. I tend to get that quite a lot when I'm out. You become hyper aware and very present, and I just feel like it's a very mindful exercise. Another time I was walking through the woods, and I was having a little bit of a tussle with my ego, and I was just sort of struggling a bit, and then I sort of managed to pull myself into that quiet space, and then a deer just sort of hopped out, and then another one did, and it was just being present. I think with photography is always a great one, and it doesn't matter where you are. Even when you're doing street photography, you become very present and hyper aware. So yeah, it's great. If you could visit any landscape in the world to shoot, where would you choose? A couple of people asked that one. I noticed that was on the reels as well. And quite simply, Scotland. I have an absolute draw towards Scotland, and there's two places on the planet that really pull me. One is the North York Moors, and I'm here, and I'm very, very, very lucky to be able to shoot this exceptional location. But the Highlands in Scotland is just something that calls me quite often, and I think I can see myself spending quite a lot of time there. I'm not one to go on weekly visits and stuff like that. I'll have to see if I can convince the missus if I can move over, if we can move, but I don't think it'll be any time soon. But yeah, Scotland, the Highlands, is the place for me. With the dynamic range of modern RAW files and the quality of software, do you think gradual ND filters are still useful? No, I don't use gradual ND filters. I think there's one filter that I recommend, and that actually Photo Tripper. I don't know if you've ever watched his videos. He did a really good video actually, just this week on the topic. And I'm in agreement with him that graduated ND filters are a load of tripe, and the only filter that I would use is a polarizer, and very rarely I use an ND filter. But to be honest, because I scratch my filters so much, and I just don't look after them very well, I just stick to a polarizer, and I don't think I've ever struggled to get that shot. There's occasions where I will use an ND filter, and it's mainly for filming actually. So, no, that is the answer to that one. DSLR or mirrorless? Mirrorless. I just think the size. I mean, I've been shooting for years and years and years. And I spent a long time with DSLRs, and I found that the weight and the size of the bodies just made it so I just did not want to go out shooting photography. So absolutely yes to mirrorless cameras, because I just feel that the weight aspect alone is enough for me. Also, the technology is just far superior. Where is your go-to place for photography? That's from Dean. Dean, the go-to place depends on the mood, I think. And the weather. So if it's raining, I will be found in woodland. If it's sunny and harsh and bright, and I'll be maybe in Whitby somewhere doing a bit of street photography. If I'm feeling fed up, again, that will affect it. So countryside, rural, that kind of thing. Dean also asked a double question. If I'm lucky, what is your favourite thing / subject to photograph? So I'm not big on nature and animals, but I am very, very big on landscape photography. Now, my favourite thing actually to shoot is capturing an animal or person within a landscape. I just really like the way that it can pull in the scale and it tells a story. I often find a lot of my images that I've taken just don't look right, and then I think they would look better with a subject in there, maybe a person. So I really like using people and animals within a wide landscape. I also really like shooting street photography. But the problem with street photography is not a lot of people like the photos being taken, and I don't like to be too disrespectful to people. So I'd rather just go into the landscape if I can. Simon Stevens Picks. Why are we photographers so brand specific? Cool, right. I just think people become fans of the equipment that they use, and it's a bit tribal, isn't it, really? My personal thing is I quite like shooting with Canon and Nikon. I do love the Fujifilm cameras as well. I think they've got some really good in-camera sort of profiles and stuff, and the internal ND filters and stuff like that for filming. I just think are really exceptional. At the moment, I'm very, very tribal, and I am Nikon. Jaywalkers, what is the weirdest thing you've ever photographed? And do you have a favourite photo? The weirdest thing I have photographed. Mushrooms are the weirdest things to photograph. Because if you catch them correctly, you can sometimes capture the light shining outwards from the bottom of it, and it looks like it's got its own little light. So yeah, the strangest thing on the planet, I would say, is a mushroom, and that's the strangest thing that I have photographed. My favourite photo is, again, the Humber Bridge shot, but I'll pop on another photo. There's two photos. So there's this one here. I just love this woodland. I could just stare at that picture for days on end. And then there's another one. I'll pop them on screen now. Favourite lens and editing tips. Okay, so I would aim this sort of question towards maybe a newer photographer or someone who's maybe not quite pro. And I think the first tip for me is I would go for landscape, especially the most versatile lens is the one that comes on the kit. It's usually around about a 24 to 70. If you can get hold of a lens that goes from around 24mm, which is maybe a 16mm, something like that, on a crop sensor, all the way up to 200, that's the most versatile I think that you could get, and that would suit me perfectly for landscape. Now, for a street photographer, is a whole different kettle of fish. Now, me personally, I have two lenses that I like for street photography. So we have the 35mm, and I think that just really gives a good story. It's a really good storytelling lens, so you can get the subject in there with some of the surrounding area, but not too much. It's a really good, and it's true to eye is a 35mm. So if you're on a crop camera, so one of the crop sensor, Nikon or Canon or whatever, I think it would be a nifty 50 that you would go for with that. And then there's the 85mm, and I think that's just a really, really subjective lens, and you will just go right in there. So I like to carry them too. Yeah, so them two for street photography. The worst lens, I'm going to throw this one in as a bonus question. The worst lens, I think, for beginner photographers is a wide angle. I think anything less than 24 you want to be staying away from, because it's quite a difficult territory to work in. And I often find it's just subjective, this, but I often find that I don't enjoy wide angle photography as much. Although if you're a working professional photographer and you're about to do jobs with, let's say, property, sort of, real estate stuff, cars, architecture, filming, then your best lens actually is the one that I would tell a beginner photographer to stay away from. Let me have a look at this. Right. Okay. What's your favourite spot in North Yorkshire? Yeah, so it's got to be the River Esk, But more so, if you want a little bit more of a complex answer, it's Eskdale that I like. And it's the biggest dale within the North York Moors. And the majority of the dales sort of cut into Eskdale. So a little bit of information. The North York Moors, it's all dales and then upperland. And the dales are basically areas of land that have been carved out over millennia from ice ages, and anyway, what you've got is this dramatic landscapes, and the North York Moors is full of these very different dales, and the biggest one is Eskdale, and it runs from Whitby all the way up to Westerdale, and it's an absolutely fantastic part of North Yorkshire. And there's also a walk that you can do. It's called the Esk Valley Walk. If you've never done it before and you get a chance, it's definitely worth doing. Do you prefer to shoot in rural or city areas? I prefer landscape photography. That's my true joy. So rural would be the answer. I love shooting street photography though, but I find the century situation gets a bit much for me, so I soon retreat back to the countryside. Now, this is a really good question. How do you stay motivated? I think the motivation question can be separated up into little sections of advice, and that's how I would answer the question. So firstly, my motivation is based around the fact that photography is something that it makes my mental health thrive. I do very well when photography is in my life. A lot of people have the same sort of situation with going to the gym. They find that they become very elated and feel very good after a good gym set, and I find that to be the case with photography. And I suppose it's because you're out in the countryside, you're exercising, and then obviously you're coming home with a fantastic image, or you're not coming home with a fantastic image, but you're out and doing that chase, and you're very present and in the moment and being very mindful. And as a result of that, I just think the motivation is intertwined within the fact that it does me wonders for my mental health. I think as well, routine as well. If you keep into a routine, shooting every day if you can. I've been a bit poorly this week, so I've got a little bit of photography withdrawal syndrome going on, but I'm hoping that'll be a bit better tomorrow, and I will be out in that frozen fog, which is what we're promised. That's another motivating factor, actually, the fact that everything changes constantly, and I look out my window and I'm like, oh my god, I've got to get out to that. So yeah, that's what motivates me. What's your favourite time of day to photograph? Now, I hate sunrise and I hate sunsets. I know that my best photography would generally be around those times, but to be honest, my favourite time of day of shooting is the time that I breeze out the door. So it's usually afternoon, and then I sort of hang around into the sunset. But there's about an hour before sunset that I really like. And I also really like the bit after sunset, particularly if you're by a river. You can get some really nice long exposures with some really nice light, blue light. So I would say the hour running up to sunset and the half an hour just after sunset I really like. What software do you use for editing photographs and video? Adobe is the system that I use. I've used loads of different ones, and I've found that Lightroom and Premiere Pro are just the two ones for me. And unfortunately, they're very, very expensive. But so is a gym membership, so you've got to look at it like that. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone on Instagram for getting involved, and I want to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.